Hey guys, so Apple had its WWDC 2020 week last week where they unveiled a bunch of stuff like hardware and software updates, and I wanted to give you my opinion as a software developer and as a person who has had different Apple devices in his life but also had different devices like Android or Google devices. So let's have a look. So the main theme of this event was iOS 14. First they introduced the app library, which basically organizes your apps in different categories. So it could be like entertainment, social stuff, so you can find them much more easily than having to like scroll around into pages of apps to find something. And they also introduced widgets, so basically now you can do more things. You can put widgets on your main screen, so you can like have them between your apps, move them around. You have something that they call the Smart Stack widget, which is basically like a widget placeholder which changes widgets throughout the day depending on the configuration you give it as the user. They also introduced this thing called the widget kit, which basically allows you to automatically build like a personalized widget menu. And they've also brought picture-in-picture video, which is basically the thing which you can like minimize the video you're watching and it overlays on top of your other apps or whatever you're doing, so you can keep watching a video while you're doing something else. And of course, a lot of people made fun of Apple because these features already existed on Android, but I don't really necessarily see it as a bad thing, because even though they did come late to the party, they were willing to implement them in their own software. Otherwise, they would either not have them forever, and the people would be like, oh, but Android has these features, why don't Apple have it? Or they would try to make something else that doesn't really work and try to claim it as like the best thing in their own invention. Kind of like the MacBook Touch Bar. So yeah, Android did it first, but it's a good thing Apple brought it to iOS. Some more updates were with Siri. Siri doesn't really take the whole screen anymore, but it's a small overlay on top of the UI, which is obviously useful because you want to use the assistant while you're doing other things. You don't really need it to take the whole screen. And they've given Siri new knowledge. I don't know what that means, but apparently she knows how to do more stuff now. Such as the new Translate app, which basically allows you to use Siri to translate a language to another language. And that way you can have a conversation with someone who doesn't speak your language. If only there was some other app that could do that. Personally, I'm not a big fan of voice assistants. I've tried using them, but I just think it's just more trouble than it's worth. Usually because most of the time you just say something and it doesn't understand you. I'm not sure if it's my accent or whatever, but definitely think it's faster to just like pull up your phone and do something, like press a few buttons instead of just like repeating the same command 5 times until the AI in the voice assistant understands what you're saying. And I do have an Amazon Echo Dot at home that has Alexa. And I have to say, it's just a useless piece of shit. Alexa, tell me a joke.
What did the coffee say to the cream? It's hard for me to espresso myself, but I really love you a latte.
So moving on to messages, they introduced a new pin feature, which basically allows you to pin conversations to the top of the screen. So people you talk to more often, you have better access to them. This could be useful, but at the same time, I think for me, the people who I talk to more often, they're usually at the top of my screen anyway, because the conversation pops up anytime you talk to them anyway. If you have like 10 or 20 people you talk to very often, if you just pin everyone on the top, then you basically go back to not having anyone at the top. So could be a bit redundant, I don't know. A feature that I think would be very useful. You know when sometimes someone texts you and you forget to respond because, I don't know, something happened, like someone called you when you saw the message, you just forget to respond, right? And then like 3 days go by and the other person is like, what the fuck, like why didn't this person respond to me? What did I do to them? So I think there should be like some feature that reminds you after you view a message, which should get a response. So for example, if someone asks you for plans to go out or something, if the messaging app could guess that like maybe you forgot to respond, it could give you a reminder or something so you know to get back to them. Because I had a lot of funny moments with like either me or someone else forgot to respond. For example, my friend here, like this is the funniest text conversation ever, which happened like a few months ago. And this is like a classic example of sometimes you just forget, so it would be good to have someone to remind you, and that someone could be the messaging app. So yeah, if they bring a feature like that, then that would be much more useful, at least for me. A thing I don't like about iMessage is that basically Apple forces you to only use it with other Apple users, so you lose all the features if you're talking with someone who has an Android, which is basically half the population, maybe a bit more. And Apple is basically reinforcing their ecosystem, so you can only have these new cool features if you talk to someone who has the iPhone. Otherwise, you know, they should just go get an iPhone, you know? Why would you talk to someone who has an Android? And that kind of sucks because they are doing some nice renovating things, and I don't see why they want to keep it just in their own market. I mean, people who buy an iPhone are not buying it because of iMessage, I assume. So there's more reasons to buy an iPhone than just that service. So these kind of tools, I feel they should share more with other developers and and make it more open than just having it for iOS devices. Then we have new emojis, which is a very useful feature if you're 15 years old. So they gave you new ways to create your look. I guess it's kind of fun to see yourself as an avatar. So it's still amusing, but not very useful. And the funny thing is, they also introduced a new look with face masks, because obviously we're gonna be stuck in this pandemic forever, and that's gonna be our new look. Why would you want your face emoji to be you wearing a mask? Do you think I want to look like this for the rest of my life? Then they made some upgrades for the groups, like they had inline replies, or you get notifications in the group chats only when they mention your name, which is very useful if you join all of those annoying groups where they just keep texting shit you don't care about. They brought new features to the maps, new countries, new guides, cycling directions. But personally, I'm still gonna use Google Maps. I don't know if anyone uses Apple Maps. If you use Apple Maps and I offended you, smash that like button. The one thing they added is EV routing, which basically gives you a good route to drive your car so you can find electric charging stations. But I don't have an electric car. I don't even have a car in London, so I'm not gonna use that. But I'm sure it's quite a useful feature for those who do. Maybe it's also something that should be added to Google Maps. And now you can also use your iPhone as a car key. And the first car to support it will be the 2021 BMW M5 series, because of course it wouldn't be like a Honda Civic. Then they have app clips, which is basically a smaller version of an app that's going to allow users to use like a very certain functionality of the app very quickly, so they don't have to download a big file. I'm a bit skeptical about this because I'm thinking if someone wants to download like a small sample of the app and that's going to be the only useful part they want, why don't they just make the app a bit smaller? Why does it have to be like a separate miniature version of the app? It just sounds like it's going to be a bit of a headache for the developers without it being much useful. But I guess it's one of those things that we're going to have to play with it and then see how it works. I'm guessing some people might like it, but it might not catch up as much. It's worth the experiment. And that's a good time to talk about Apple being greedy with the developers. Apparently, if you want to have the privilege of being an Apple developer, you have to pay Apple $100 a year or £79 in the UK just to be able to make iPhone apps and deploy them to the App Store. And Apple gets 30% from the sales, so the developer gets only 70%. That's with every company, I think, so that part makes sense. But I don't really get why you have to pay such a big fee every year just to make apps that support their own ecosystem. Google, for example, only charges $25 as a one-time fee for like a developer account on Google Play. But Apple does need its yearly check from every developer to allow you to do that. Of course, everyone knows Apple is probably one of the greediest companies in the world. They make a lot of good products, but they are very greedy and they try to squeeze money out of everything, basically. So maybe they want to squeeze some money out of the consumers, that's fine. But for the developers who actually support them, I don't really see why they have to get money off of them too. If you're an iOS developer and you pay the yearly fee and you think it's worth it, let me know why in the comments below. So for iPadOS, they had some more updates. One thing I really liked is that now they have the Scribble thing, which basically has really good OCR and it recognizes your handwriting as text. So you can actually search for your handwriting or translate it to like normal type text. Which is very useful, and personally my handwriting is really bad, so that would be very useful for me to like make really quick notes and have beautifully typed text on my computer. And also I'm very curious if it can do math equations very well, because for example, if you're studying something mathematical or like machine learning, you get to write a lot of equations by hand, because basically writing math equations on something like LaTeX is just quite time consuming. You have to use a lot of weird characters in order to make the math notation right. So if the iPad can actually read exponentials and fractions and stuff like that properly and translate it to text, that would definitely be a big time saver. They had some updates for AirPods, like switching between devices automatically or having surround sound. For WatchOS, they added some new features, like now you have more watch faces and configurations. You can share faces with other people. There's a fitness app that now supports dancing, and basically they show you this by this lady dancing on the screen for like 5 minutes, and it shows you what you can do. And another thing they introduced is the hand washing tracking. Really? We need to keep track of how long we're washing our hands. That's why we need smartwatches. I mean, I know we're getting to a point where like people use less of their cognitive skills because there's too much technology going around, but having something to track your washing time is just like ridiculously useless in my opinion. They might as well make like a tracker that counts how long you're taking a piss for, just to ensure you're not getting dehydrated. And they introduced sleep tracking, which is the creepiest feature of all. So basically now the smartwatch can understand when you're sleeping and monitor you. So now not only do I have to worry about Google tracking my data and Facebook and all the other companies, but I also have to worry about Apple listening to me sleep.
Yes, sleep. Yes.
On the latter note, they also made some really nice improvements in privacy and security. There's more control, more transparency, which is always very useful today. They introduced the new macOS Big Sur, which is basically a big change in redesign in the UI. I don't really like the new look. There's a lot of rounded corners. App icons look like they were made for an iPad. So I don't know, this might be one of those cases that you get used to after a while, but right now I don't really like it. They added some quick settings in the notification center, which again looks a bit like a tablet. I'll have to use it and see if I like it or not. Finally, Apple also made the move that it's been talking about for so long. They announced that they're gonna switch from the Intel processors to the Apple's own custom silicon ones. And this is a big move because it's gonna lead to many improvements like power usage, efficiency, performance in Apple devices. They're gonna be able to have more control with their own applications in terms of optimization, because basically they're gonna be making almost the full hardware and the software themselves. So they'll be able to tailor their apps to use exactly what they need from the processors instead of having to rely on Intel's engineers. This might also change the pricing of the computers. I don't think they're gonna become cheaper because on the one hand, they're not gonna pay Intel for processors anymore. They're gonna have their own ones. But on the other hand, they're gonna spend money on research and development and all that stuff. So it might not affect the price on the Macs, but it might make them a better product in the end, keeping the same price point. But I'm guessing there might be like a slight increase, like £100, like they usually do every few years, with the new processors as an excuse. For developers, this move might make it a bit more of a headache for optimization, because now you have to choose if you want to optimize your app for the Intel Macs or for the Apple Silicon Macs. And it's going to take some time for all the developers to optimize their apps well for the new processors. They estimate it's going to take around 2 years for the full transition to happen, which makes sense as a timeline. So we just have to wait and see what these new processors will give us in terms of performance and how it's going to help the developers maybe make better apps, better games, stuff like that. So in conclusion, Apple's WWDC 2020 had some really nice features presented and some really useless features presented. I like to think there were more useful features than not. Apple did manage to catch up with Android with some features like widgets, and they also brought their own little things to the table. Apple does seem to be a bit stubborn and continue trying to keep its own ecosystem without really working with other software companies outside Apple. And generally, there are some nice upgrades that might be worth it for someone to upgrade. Personally, for me, I don't really see a big reason to update my Mac, because except from the UI, I didn't really see anything very useful, and I don't really like the new UI anyway. But I'm generally not a person who jumps on the new update every time, because I have found them to suspiciously slow down my devices after a while. And also you lose compatibility with all the old software you have, so that's a bit annoying too. So guys, hit the like button and subscribe to this channel to be notified for new videos when they come out. Let me know your opinions of WWDC 2020. Are you gonna upgrade to iOS 14 or not? Why? Also, I don't know if you noticed, but I kind of upgraded my YouTube studio here. I'm not sure if this is gonna be my final look. I'm still trying to play around with the lights and decorations and stuff to see what I like. I'm gonna make a video of how I did it and how you can do it for cheap soon, maybe next week. So again, make sure you're subscribed so you see it when that comes out. See you next time.